Hi everyone, my name's Seyi, and this is the Iterate Podcast. This is a podcast where we talk to entrepreneurs about their experience starting companies and eventually making money. This week, our guest is Collin Forbes. He's a student at the University of Florida who started too many businesses to count, and he'll talk through his first experience starting a larger company and now a lot of his small project that he has going on. So hope you guys enjoy. There we go.
Okay, sweet. Okay, nice.
Hey Collin, how's it going?
Hey man, pretty good.
Yeah, all right. So I've done a little intro. So I guess the first thing we should do is get a little background on you. How did you get into entrepreneurship? I guess just like give yourself a little intro.
Yeah, so my name's Collin Forbes, and I've always kind of known that I wanted to do something in entrepreneurship, either be my own boss or something along those lines. Originally, all throughout high school, I wasn't sure if it was going to be me starting my own business or getting into a business and then working my way up. But during my senior year of high school, I came up with the idea for what would soon to become Classroom Sync, which was my major focus in entrepreneurship for the first couple of years of my college career. But at that point, I kind of knew that I wanted to pursue the direction of starting my own business myself and go that general direction. But yeah, nowadays I don't work on Classroom Sync as much, but there's a whole bunch of other smaller businesses I've been working on as of more recently.
Nice. Wait, so growing up, did you have any exposure to entrepreneurship? Is that like why you're interested in it, or you kind of just like how did you kind of discover that whole sphere of?
Yeah, I had always seen videos on YouTube, be your own boss, and a lot of the tech gurus. You see Elon Musk starting up his own business, and that definitely applied to me. But it wasn't until about the college that I really realized that dream of being my own boss. My mom, she wasn't. Entrepreneurship really never came in the family. My mom is a hard worker. She worked her way up through the ladder and is now one of the leading executives in her business. And I kind of always look to her for that inspiration to see, compare what success is like for somebody like me. And I kind of always saw that. But as I got into college, I realized that, regular people can do it, that what you see online and you see these incredibly smart people making these businesses and realizing that actually it's not just these incredibly smart people that are doing it. It's more, not your average Joes, and it's your people that, it's being driven and actually going out there and doing it yourself. So I'd say I kind of found it just naturally. I have a lot of big goals in life, and being able to create something is really what drives me, even whether or not that's a business or an artwork or something just lasting. I really want to make an impact, not so much in people's lives, but I want more or less leave like a legacy behind. And I feel like for me personally, entrepreneurship and being able to create a business and something along those lines really resonates with me.
Nice, dude. That's awesome. Okay, so you mentioned Classroom Sync, and obviously I know what that is, but for those who might not, can you kind of give some context as to what Classroom Sync and also how you came up with the idea?
So I'll start with the idea. So it was my senior year of high school, and it was about midway through, right when applications for colleges were being sent in, right just beforehand. And I was in my Calculus 2 class, and my teacher had, just like my school, had a very strict no cell phone policy. And to some extent, every law or every rule has its weak spots and stuff. And we were working on assignment, and rather than go across the room and grab the big old chunky TI-84, I decided I'd just pull out my phone and do this quick little simple calculation. And my teacher saw me do that, and he was very, very anti-phone and just hated them for understandable reasons. But he gave me a referral. And this to me was absolutely traumatizing because, like I said, this was right before college applications went out. So I was completely mortified that one single event was going to ruin my chances of getting into my dream college, which was actually UF. Thankfully, I'm here to tell the tale, but that was absolutely mortifying. And so from that, before I figured out what I was going to do, if I wasn't going to be able to go to college, I looked at, possibly doing entrepreneurship. Thankfully, I kind of have best of both worlds. But so Classroom Sync solves the problem of being able to use phones in a classroom setting. So what we did is we developed an app that kids would download on their phones, and it would contain a whole bunch of different sub apps. So flashcards, textbooks, calculators, web browsers, pretty much anything you could ever really need in a classroom. And what we'd then do is we would link the information of when the student is on our app and only on our app, and then which sub app they're using. And we would collect that information, and then we would send it to the teacher, and we would give them a little window pane on their computer or their web browser, wherever it might be. And it would give them a really quick summary, whether they were on the phone, on the app itself or not, and then which sub app they were using. And so the purpose of this was to allow for teachers to not have to stare over every single kid's shoulder and see if they're using their phone for the right purpose or not. Basically, all it was so that way, rather than have schools buying $300, $400, $500 iPads for every single student or computers for every individual student, to kind of reduce the e-waste. And we said, hey, don't buy all these devices. Let your students bring their devices and let them use the devices that they bring with them every single day and actually enhance it rather than shun it. So that's kind of in, a short couple minute where kind of the idea behind Classroom Sync and kind of the idea behind and the product itself that we had developed came from.
Nice, dude. I didn't know that's where it like started. Also, it's kind of funny that like you're like, oh no, a referral. I'm never gonna go to college. I guess I'll make my own.
I like to worry a lot, so that was always that was definitely a fear of mine at the time.
That's funny. So okay, from that point when you came up with the idea, how long was it until you actually started putting things into action?
Yeah, so that was like I said, midway through my senior year of high school, which I think was 2017. And then it had been maybe about like a couple weeks, and I realized because I had been brooding the whole time. I went to, I wasn't too happy, and then I figured out I could actually possibly make a service to kind of prevent other students from happening to other students as well. And so one of the first things I did, ironically, is I talked with the teacher that actually gave me the referral. Me and him were actually pretty close, and he must have been having a bad day or whatnot. I don't really know. But I actually pitched him the idea, and he had actually, ironically, done back in the 90s, I think it was, done some basic computer simulation games and, basic ones. And so he liked the idea. He thought there was merit to it. And so from that, I actually talked with my high school principal, who I was good with, to see if there was a need for it. And then I talked with a whole bunch, basically every single string I could pull to get in front of a teacher or an administrator in some way or shape. And so that was about maybe a month after the dreaded referral. But the actual business, I had written the business plan and made some god awful, horrible renders or quote unquote renders of what the software would look like. I actually was just looking at them the other day. My eye for color is absolutely horrible. But anyway, I used Microsoft Paint to be able to paint over some like I said, quote unquote renders of what it would look like. But I really hadn't, and I developed the business plan to basic amounts. But it really wasn't until I came to actually UF that I was able to actually pursue that and work on it. And I had chosen to live in Infinity Hall, which is the entrepreneurship innovation. The downstairs of it has a whole bunch of, it's almost comparable to like a makerspace where they have 3D printers, laser cutters, water jets, and a whole bunch of different resources. And also down there at the time was, I think it was called Launchpad. And that was ran by Kwong. And I kind of just sent emails to everybody, and he responded, and we set up a meeting. I pitched him the idea, the reason behind it, what it could be, what it was supposed to do. And from there, we actually met up with Aaron, and we actually started developing it. Because at the time, I actually didn't have the means. I didn't know how to code at the time. And especially, even if I did know how to code, I wasn't able to do it extensively enough to be able to write the entire software and make it actually work and be able to be deployed. So
Got you. So you think that it was in large part because of meeting Aaron and Kwong and kind of having them give you tips about what the next steps are? Like you actually, do you think that you would have continued moving forward with it if it wasn't for that connection, or that kind of just was like a catalyst to you moving?
I definitely think it was a catalyst. I think I know there's definitely a lot of good resources on campus. It was kind of the one that definitely showed faith in the product, and it really showed me that I could do it. And it was kind of my first direction that I really felt comfortable in going. And I really didn't know what I was doing at the time. So it was really good to have that mentorship and have that ability to kind of steer me in the right direction. As I had mentioned, I had actually done a very, very basic business plan at the time, which at the time was like a 3-page Word document. And I remember specifically a really good example of being kind of steered in the right direction was doing what's called a business model canvas. I actually have it still. I'm in my room currently. It's actually still up on my wall, believe it or not. But it has a whole bunch of different things. It was a really good way of initially designing the product and figuring out what you need. I'm looking at now. So it's the problem, solution, value proposition, customer segments, channels, all those fun things. But yeah, that really helped me guide me in the right direction. And it would have, to know if it would have been done or not without their help, I can't really say, but it definitely sped up the process. No doubt about that.
Nice. So how did you kind of get the insight to go and look into making the business model canvas and kind of planning stuff out more from your association with these mentors that you have? Or was it kind of because, like, correct me if I'm wrong, you started off studying business?
Mm-hmm. I actually started off as mechanical engineering at the time.
Right. Yeah. Got you. So it was from those connections, or was it from you doing research? Was it from class? Like, how did you kind of know what to do next, I guess, from there, and like planning?
Yeah, it was definitely from Kwong and Aaron for sure. At the time, like I said, I had the really short Word document, and I really didn't know where to go or how to even what the first step was. I had grown up in not the smallest town, but a small town, and there wasn't really a thriving ecosystem, and specifically people really didn't know what to do. It wasn't the only kind of entrepreneurship, at least from where I come from, is mainly like restaurants and small businesses, not so much big tech startups, or at least aim to be big tech startups. So.
Got you. Okay, cool. That makes sense. So what was the process like, I guess, of building a team? Because I'm assuming, you had these people that kind of had resources and knew which direction to point you in. But then it's the issue of, finding developers and finding people that can help you, scale this. And like, what were the next?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So as I mentioned, Kwong kind of introduced me to Aaron, and Aaron was able to code the thing, the software itself. But for the actual team itself, it was mainly me for the first 1.5 years, probably, because at the time I was and just like a lot of new founders, people that are interested in entrepreneurship, I've learned that a lot of people are absolutely terrified of sharing their ideas. And now I look at it a little bit differently, that unless it's the next Facebook, I don't think anybody's going to steal it, especially if you already have traction and have movement. But I remember I was so terrified to tell anybody about it. But eventually, so the first year, because it took about, I think it was a good 6 months to develop. The first year I kind of just did everything by myself. But then I realized in my second year of college that I would need help. If this was going to grow to any size, to be anything impactful or anything of size, I would need to bring people on. And luckily I was at, of course, UF, and I was in the entrepreneurship club, and they had a event where it would kind of showcase the small startups. And I was lucky enough to do that in the basement of the Marston Science Library. And I was actually able to get, I think it was like 25 resumes of students that were really, really interested in actually helping out with the company. And so that was an amazing experience. And I also had met somebody during convocation who showed a lot of interest in the very beginning. That eventually fizzled out, and it was kind of just me by myself. But during that event at Marston, we had about, we accepted 2 guys, and one of them was a coder, and one of them was a marketing person, because that's my weak spot, is in the marketing. I never grew up with much marketing, so I definitely needed somebody to fill in that gap that I had. And so those 2 guys were really, really invaluable for a while. So, but then I was luckily able to help them get their internship credit, and they definitely provided a really good service, and I'm super thankful for them.
That's awesome. So, like, what was that kind of relationship like? Because I feel like for a lot of people, learning how to be a leader is a very large learning curve. Did you have any experience with that in the past? If not, what was that kind of like, having to direct 2 people and kind of give instruction and kind of help 2 people, be assistants?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it wasn't only at 2. As it went on, we at one point even had 5 people, including myself. And so that was really intense at one point, to make sure that everybody. One thing that I actually had the hardest time was trying to divvy up the work in a way that I wasn't doing everything, because and a lot of people I've met have a really hard time with letting go and trusting in other
Totally.
people. I was really bad about that. And a side note with entrepreneurship, even though I'm going to kind of spoil the ending, that the company wasn't a huge success, but I feel like I really learned a lot about myself and just how to communicate and be able to understand myself better and be a better person in general, just from the skills I've learned. But yeah, we had 5 people, including myself, and just I had previous experience back in high school. I was vice president of SGA. I think it was my junior year. And so that was a pretty good experience, but high school is completely different to running an actual startup where you have financials and people that are invested in it. And so that kind of came naturally. The people that I had were really understanding and were really, really, really passionate about it. And so I was really thankful for that, and that helped out a lot. But just finding out how to let go and actually have them ask for work to do and ask like, hey, can I do this, was something that was really, really incredible, because not only was I trying to prove myself, they were also trying to prove themselves, not to me, but like to put it on their resume, because if they could make the company grow as big as well, they could say that they had done that as well, and kind of stake their claim in the company, you know. And that was, I think, really impactful for sure.
Got you. Nice, dude. That's so then, okay, you have this team, you're building this product. I know that you had to do a lot of pitching and talking to investors potentially. What was that process like, and how did you kind of get into this?
Mm-hmm. Well, so that was actually through Collin. He kind of, I'm trying to remember exactly the exact process, but I had stayed involved with him for a very long time. And over the course of that time, there were many different pitch events. I still remember my pitch event was at a brewery, I think it was, and or Swamphead Brewery actually is where it was. And we did the pitch event, and so that was something. Eventually, long term, we never actually got any funding for this for it, but for other businesses instead. But that was a really, really interesting process, because I consider myself a little bit more of an introvert, and something about the startups is you have to be, you can still be an introvert, but you have to learn how to actually outgo a little bit. And so that definitely took me some time to get used to. But the process of getting up on stage, and like I preluded to earlier, was the good skills that I learned, you know, through, even though the business wasn't a gigantic success, just learning the skills of getting up in front of a crowd and learning how to talk with people and learning how to network was incredibly invaluable.
Right.
I highly recommend it. Even, you know, just doing a small startup and pitching it and, you know, developing the process through is just so worthwhile. It really is.
Right. And like, not even just having to talk to people, but having to ask people for money,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like I'm sure like that in itself is like a very scary prospect for people. Like, how did you kind of deal with the whole financials part of it? How did your team kind of deal with that? What, you know, like when the idea was still alive and you were still working on this company, were you making profit?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at one time we never actually made too much profit. We made a little bit by licensing it out to some of the pilot schools. We got into, I think it was at one time we were in two. Well, we had a total of 3, and we had 2 at one time. And so we really never raised much money. That's actually why the company kind of dissolved a little bit, just because we weren't pulling in those revenues that we needed to be able to continue funding and bootstrapping ourselves. But we, of the 5, well, 4 interns and people, one of them was actually a financial guy. He was getting his degree in finances, or in finance. And so that was, he was really, really good. We did market projections, and we tried our best to sell, but the numbers in something like this required a lot more money than we were able to fundraise. And also, and yeah, so that was a fun experience. But
Nice. So then, and like I want to move on to some of your more like current projects, but I guess one of the last questions I have about Classroom Sync is, how did you kind of get the word out about this? How did you like market? How did you kind of figure out, you know, which people to start talking to actually get this into?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so one of the biggest things that we did, and the timing on it was just absolutely perfect. We actually we went to a what's the word? A convention. It was specifically targeted for education technology startups, or not startups, but just education technology. And it was called the FETC, Futures for Education Technology Convention. I'm surprised I still remember that. But we went to that, and that's actually where we got all of our. We got 2 of the pilot schools to that, and then one was through my my principal friend from back when I was in high school. And so that was really, really good to be able to do that. But then like I said, I wasn't super good in marketing, but one of the interns was. And so being able to have him work on it, and some of the advertising that we did, we had a small advertising budget. We were working on that. We actually even sent out mailers. We got some things, packaged it in a box, wrote some handwritten things, and bought a list of all the school administrators in the state of Florida. And so that was it was a really cool experience, just getting out there, learning how to market and also how to do it effectively. That's something I think we all kind of underestimated was, we were spending money, but at one point we weren't spending it super efficiently. So once there was that steep learning curve, once you got it, it was good. And that was really something very valuable.
That's dope. So, this is something that I was talking recently too, that I was talking to another founder about recently, because in freshman year I started a sticker printing thing, right? Pretty small thing in comparison, but it kind of sustained me for a while and was a very big part of who I was. You know what I mean? Which I'm sure, like at the time while you're doing Classroom Sync, you kind of felt similar. Like this is like, like a business is kind of your baby, and like it's a large part of who you are and what you're doing with your life, right? What was
for sure
something I was talking to one of my friends who also founded his own company about, was that kind of period after you stop running a company and kind of that void where you feel, because it feels like part of you is gone almost. Did you experience that, like kind of like attaching your sense of self to your business, and then once it not being there anymore, kind of having to refigure out what to do with your time, or like like which projects to do, or even like feeling like part of your personality was gone? Like, have you ever experienced?
Oh, definitely. Because one thing I was known as the Classroom Sync guy. That was my thing. That's all I talked about at one point. All my friends, they would continually ask me questions. How's it going? How's fundraising going? All these things. And that was definitely for a good long time. That was my 100% focus. And it just so happened that the correlation between us kind of running out of money and running out of kind of options correlated with my school grades declining. So I was luckily I didn't really have a time where I just wasn't working on anything. I actually have tons of ideas. I actually have too many ideas that I want to pursue. But at the time, I really had to buckle down because my grades were starting to slip, and I had to really focus on that. I had to get my priorities straight, because as much as I love entrepreneurship, I do want to have some sort of backbone a little bit when it comes to like financial security. So that's something I value, but I definitely felt that there was something, and I actually have my poster from that convention hanging up on my wall. And so it definitely feels, when you have that lack, it's something that you've invested. For me, I think it was 2.5, 3 years of my life, and having it kind of just gone without any real physical like results, kind of hurt for sure. But you definitely move past it over some time. It's just kind of like a breakup. You feel a little hurt inside, and then you kind of just get past it and move on to the next best thing. So.
Right, totally. Nice, dude. Okay, so Classroom Sync, you learn a lot. It doesn't work out. However, like it was obviously a very like large growth experience for you. After that, what were your next steps? What did you want to work on next, and what are you?
Yeah. So after Classroom Sync, I took about a good 6 months, about a semester or whatnot, a good amount of time. I don't remember how long, but I had my desire to really fulfill and go after another startup. Wasn't until it was actually during the entrepreneurship club, and I had mentioned that at one point I wanted to build a school bus RV conversion, which is just more of a personal project. I love the idea of being able to convert stuff. I have always been a builder. I love, as I kind of had mentioned, I love creating stuff. And so for me, creating stuff could be intangible or tangible. And I really, really wanted to build a school bus, and it was incredibly expensive. And I was saving some money together. I was looking for people that wanted to share the cost with me to kind of lease it out almost. And I remember specifically one of the people that I knew in entrepreneurship club, they suggested, why don't you rent it out? People would probably pay for that, especially the fraternities and the sororities and the Greek life. And I was like, you know what? You're right. And so for a little while, I drew up designs for different types of school buses and shuttle buses that would be converted into party buses that would probably run a circuit from, Midtown, Gainesville to downtown to Frat Row to Sorority Row, kind of do a circuit for a while. And that was going good. We actually raised $18,000 for that, more than we had ever raised for Classroom Sync. And the personal reason why I think is just because the returns on it, which were so much faster. After we had, the bus would take about a good 4 to 6 months to convert, just because we would strip it down completely and then rebuild it up completely. But the returns on it were so much faster, and that really incentivized a lot of my closer people I knew that would be more interested in and that would like to see the returns, in a year versus in 5 or 10 years. But it just so happens that COVID happened, and just like everything, it affected pretty much everything.
Hard
And
time.
so, yeah. So, of course, people made it off a lot worse. And luckily, we had actually bought a bus on Craigslist, and it was a school bus, a regular school bus. And one of my friends, I think he's like 6 foot something. If you've ever been in a school bus recently, I know you're pretty tall, Shay.
I'm 6'5".
Yeah, you probably won't fit in a school bus, or if you do, your head will scrape. I think the interior, if I remember correctly, the interior maximum height in the very dead center is like 6'4". And so that would make a very good party bus, especially for your college kids that are usually taller or whatnot. And so we were actually able to give the bus back, and we only lost our $50 deposit on it because the guy who we bought it from Craigslist had multiple buyers that wanted to buy it. So we were really lucky in that. And while we were searching for a second bus, which we were now looking at doing like a shuttle bus, an airport shuttle bus, COVID happened, and we kind of gave back the money to the investors. And like, we're going to hold off a little bit. It's probably not the best thing to buy a bus. We don't know what the party scene is going to look like. This was, of course, a year and a half ago, so nobody knew anything at the time. And so that kind of fizzled out. And I had intended, once COVID started slowing down and things relatively started returning back to normal, which they probably have by about now, we were intending on buying a bus, but now I've preoccupied myself with a lot of smaller businesses. And that's something I've really learned more recently in life within the last year is to really, I am now a fan of doing these small businesses. As in small, I mean Etsy and almost fully automated businesses, not so much drop shipping. What I do currently now is I think I saw a post on the internet or something like that, and they had a map. They had a map of I think it was Korea, and they had every single road, and it was in this minimalist fashion. I'm like, oh my god, I love that. I would love to buy that. And I looked online, and there was nobody that had it, and at the time at least. And so this was over summer of 2020, so it would have been the summer that COVID was really running rampant. I spent like 2 weeks, and I compiled almost every single like major city in the entire US, and I made a whole bunch of different renders of it. I did in a whole bunch of different colors, and I made an Etsy store. And for a little while, I was actually fulfilling every single order. I was printing it. I was here in Gainesville. I was printing it. I was rolling it. I was shipping it, and taking hours of my day just fulfilling the orders. I only got about 4 or 5 orders a day, but that was something really, really fun to do. But eventually I figured out that there's entire services dedicated that use robotics to fulfill prints. It goes right off the printer and into some packaging and then off into the UPS truck. And so I was able to actually automate that by doing a little bit of coding that I had learned over that summer, and fully automated my production process to now where I basically only spend maybe 5 minutes a day on it, and I make a little bit of money, mainly just lunch money, but it's nothing crazy. But after that, I've really learned to embrace these small, almost like micro businesses. And I'm believing that it only takes one business to really take off. So if one of these do take off, it'll be good. And I'm definitely more interested in doing a lot of these small little businesses. But I've been doing that and a couple other little things here and there. I just bought an electric typewriter that syncs up with a computer, so that will be fun. I'm going to start making prints off of that. But yeah, I've really been just doing a lot of little things, kind of just enjoying it, not really fully dedicating myself to any one major project as of right now.
Nice, dude. That's awesome. What's your process of coming up with the ideas that you have? Because you say that you have a lot, and it seems like there are a lot of things that you want to do in the future. Like, how do you kind of come up?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, it just takes practice. I've always been one to seek out problems and try to figure out how to fix that. Like I said, if I love building stuff. I started out with building gas-powered RC boats, and then I'd have a problem. I'd fix that problem, and then I'd blow it up, and then I'd fix it and rebuild it again. But for me, it's just looking at any sort of pain point that I have, and I keep a journal. and I have it's to the tune of around 50 business ideas. Most of them are not good at all. One of my favorite ones that I tell people is a Roomba metal detector, which, I think it was born out of my dad had bought what is it called now? A metal detector, and my arm had gotten tired sweeping the beach, and I was like, oh, what if you automate that and have a little robotic, or a little, attach it to a little robot and have it do it for you, and then stop and beep when it finds something. And it's just stupid things like that, looking for any sort of pain point and figuring out if you can make an idea of that, and then automatically writing it down. I feel like that's actually the most important part. I've even found myself where I'm like in the middle of a dream and it's like 4 a.m, and I will purposely wake myself out of that dream to be able to write it down on my phone to go back to sleep again. So it definitely takes a little bit of experience to be able to look for all these small things and look at the pain points. But I think once you open your eyes, they just flood in. I have at least once a month, I'll find an idea, even if I'm not looking for them.
When a lot of people have a failure, like something like Classroom Sync that they've kind of put a lot of time into, they kind of go back into their cave and they're like, maybe I'm just not, cut out for this. Like, how did you kind of learn to deal with that and then bounce back and start working on?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for me, I was lucky to be born I call myself, I heard it somewhere described, and it actually perfectly describes me. The phrase is delusional optimist. And I call myself that because I'm naturally good at picking myself up after getting hit and knocked down. But I think just being able to do that, even if you're not an optimist, just being able to look at the silver lining, as I had mentioned earlier in talking with you, that even though Classroom Sync didn't work out, and of course that was incredibly sad. Like when I realized that it was kind of crumbling beneath me, that we really wouldn't be able to go. Of course it was sad. I spent 2.5, 3 years of my life on that. But I think figuring out and seeing the positives from that. We lost money, of course, but like seeing the positives and the things that I've learned, the people I've met, the networking abilities, all the abilities that I was able to gather and kind of get me to the point where I am now, to where I can kind of develop my own things, be able to, have the resources available to me, was definitely the silver lining. I always try to look at the silver lining. Now, oftentimes there's sometimes zero lining, but I think just being able to pick yourself back up and just doing something is incredibly important, no matter what it is, no matter how big you fall. So
dope. So one last question: what advice would you give to an entrepreneur who kind of has ideas and is thinking about starting? Like, what's like a piece of advice that you would want to give to someone else who was in your shoes?
Yeah, mine would definitely be to just pursue it, no matter what it is. Even if you're writing down a business plan and talking to other people, I think that would be incredibly valued. Kind of surround yourself with similar like-minded people, and who knows, you might find somebody that wants to go on an idea together. So I definitely think it's just writing on it, trying to act, even if you're not fully acting on it. Some action is better than no action at all. And one thing I would do, and something that I actually personally kind of regret, was not getting input, as in early on, with both Classroom Sync and Draw Writer. I definitely could have done a little bit more research beforehand, and I wish I hadn't kept to myself as much as I had. I actually do wish I had told more people, got the word around before actually pursuing it, just so that way we could confirm that it was a viable thing and that people were excited about it. And that just to get input, not even from your customers, but from other people as well. Of course, your customers matter the most, but just seeing people and getting their ideas and getting their opinions on it really helps either validate yourself or validate your products, I think.
Dope. That's awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you taking the time out of your afternoon. I'll definitely see you soon. But yeah, thanks, man.
Sounds good. All right. It was nice talking with you.
All right, man. We'll talk soon. Thank you for checking out that episode of the Iterate Podcast. We appreciate you listening. You can find us on YouTube at the Iterate Podcast. You can find me on Twitter at wadboy_. That's WADBOY_. On Instagram at wadboy. That's WADBOY. And I hope you guys tune in for more episodes. Appreciate it.